Everyone that has a heart should be here. Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23, the Bible says, keep the heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life. So what we're going to look at today is how you can keep the heart with all diligence. So the next part says, because out of it are the issues of life. And Leviticus 17:11 says the life of the flesh is in the blood. So what we're going to be looking at now is the heart and the blood, and also the vessels that carry the blood, because they all play a part in heart health. And the heart is a muscle, and the heart is made up of cells, all of these little cells. And you can strengthen the heart and you can weaken the heart. And what goes through the heart, what the heart pumps, is blood. And so the viscosity of the blood, the contents of the blood makes a difference, but also the blood vessels. And what are we told is the number one cause of heart disease? Cholesterol. So I think it's a good place to start. What's cholesterol? Cholesterol is a fat that is made by the liver. And the liver makes as much cholesterol as the body needs. So if the body needs a lot of cholesterol, the liver will make a lot of cholesterol. If the body doesn't need much cholesterol, it won't make much cholesterol. I have a book in my library at home, it's by Dr. Malcolm Kendrick. He's a British cardiovascular surgeon, and he's written a book called The Great Cholesterol Con. Got that? The Great Cholesterol Con. And he says in his book, for the first time, normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being called a disease. I have 5 books in my library at home. One's called The Great Cholesterol Con, by Dr. Malcolm Kendrick. Now at the end of this meeting, I'm going to clear the board and I'm going to write all those books up on the board so that you'll have that resource. One's called The Great Cholesterol Deception by Dr. Peter Dingle. One's called The Great Cholesterol Lie by Dr. Dwight Lundell, another cardiovascular surgeon. One's called The Great Cholesterol Myth by Johnny Bowden, who's basically an exercise guru. Another book is called The Great Cholesterol Hoax. They're running out of words. And in her book, Put Your Heart in Your Mouth, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, she also looks at the same issue in detail. These are doctors and health professionals from all over the world, all saying the same thing. What are they saying? Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Dr. Malcolm Kendrick said, I'm still waiting for the evidence. There is no proof. Isn't that incredible? Now, do you remember we looked at the 2 different ways of healing or supposed healing? We look at God's way, which requires faith, which works with a body that was created to heal, and it leads to life. Then we looked at the other process of so-called healing. It's based on fear. There's also a lot of lies and deception around it. And because they claim the body evolved and it wasn't created, it cannot heal, so it needs drugs. And did you know that the 3rd killer in the world today is medicine? And this is not just medical mistakes. It's also prescribed. And I remember seeing the news one night, and there were these 2 girls crying. They said, our boyfriends, they agreed to take this medical drug, and they're blown up like balloons, and they're in ICU, and they're not expected to live, and they were fit, strong young men, and they were only in their late 20s. They did it because they were going to get some money for it. I thought, what? And then a pharmaceutical representative came on and was being interviewed. What's going on, these men? And he said, well, it didn't do this on the rats. I don't know about you, but I am not interested in being experimented on. I looked at the newspaper the next day, nothing. It was never on the news again, nothing. Ugh, how often does that happen? I'm so glad that God gave me a body that can heal itself. He gave me a mind that can consider, that can analyse, and that can make choices about what I do to my body. And a lot of people have been deceived, and a lot of people are ignorant about these basic ways of healing. And in the book of Acts in the Bible, chapter 17, verse 30, it says that God winks at our ignorance. Did you hear that? God winks at our ignorance, and so should we. Many people are sick because they did not realise it. And that's why I say to mothers, don't beat yourself up over this. You vaccinated your child because you wanted the best for your child. Isn't that true? You didn't realise. But now you know. There's no need to apologise to your child. You did the best. You just say, I didn't know. But now I know. That's why we should investigate. So now I'm going to tell you the truth on cholesterol. The liver makes cholesterol. And 80% of the cholesterol that the liver makes, it makes from glucose. And 20% of the cholesterol that the body makes, it makes from fat. Now this one piece of information alone tells you it's not the butter on the bread, it's the bread under the butter. The wrong guy's been shot. Fat's been shot because of who it hangs around with. There are two main types of cholesterol that the liver makes. One is called high-density lipoprotein. And high-density lipoprotein is called the good guy, or the good cholesterol. Why is it called the good cholesterol? Because it carries excess cholesterol back to the liver. And so that's why it's called the good cholesterol. And the other main type of cholesterol is LDL. LDL, low-density lipoprotein, and it's called the bad cholesterol. Yeah? Right. But the body doesn't make anything bad. It doesn't make anything bad. So why is it called the bad cholesterol? Well, first of all, let me show you what its role is in the body. LDL cholesterol is the repairer and the rebuilder. So whenever there's repair or rebuilding to be done, where will you find LDL? You'll find it there. But LDL does something else. It delivers cholesterol to the brain, and the brain loves cholesterol. Because the brain is the fattiest organ in the body. And looking at fuel, glucose runs at 4 calories per gram. Whereas fat, it burns at 9 calories per gram. And we're going to look at this a little bit more tonight when we look at weight loss. And isn't this why most people say if you want to lose weight, stop the fat? Because it's going to give you more than twice the units, or twice the calories, yeah? But what's a calorie? It's a unit of energy. So if you want a high energy food, what do you eat? Fat. Now you can see why the brain loves fat, because it consumes 15 times the fuel of any other cell. And so it loves this high energy fuel. So let's look at the blood vessel and look at how these cholesterols work in the blood. Because of its high density, HDL is always floating in the middle. Because of its low density, LDL, you'll find it on the edge. In her book, Who Put Your Heart in Your Mouth, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, she spends 4 chapters looking at all the environmental poisons that come into the blood and start breaking down the little endothelium cells that line the arteries. And we're exposed to so many chemicals today. It is estimated we're confronted with 100,000 more chemicals every year. Yeah. In our laundry detergent, in our toothpaste, in our shampoo, our skin cream, on our clothes, what our clothes are made out of, in our food. It's just everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And these chemicals come into the blood, and those little endothelium cells that line the arteries, it damages them, damage. I used to say there were 4,000 chemicals in a cigarette. My sister recently, who's a scientist, she said to me, Barbara, there's 7,000 chemicals in a cigarette. Yeah. I think even medicine acknowledges that smoking is a contributing factor to heart disease. So what's happening, students? And then mercury fillings in the mouth, those heavy metals. Mercury's found in fish, it's found in your mercury fillings in the mouth, it's found in vaccines, especially the flu vaccine. Damage, more damage. Who's going to plug up the hole, students? LDL. It's there on the edge, just waiting to do its job. Plugs up the hole. Whenever damage has been sustained by the cell, you've then got scar tissue. Isn't that right? I'm sure we've all got scars somewhere. My husband used to be a wild biker. He's got all the scars. all the crashes he had. Scars. They're not as supple, are they? So can you see the walls of the artery are getting stiffer? They're getting more built up. The person doesn't realise that sweet-smelling washing detergent, those chemicals are coming in, and little by little. Now, what I'm mentioning, it's almost like dripping tap on a stone. It's just a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there, and it's all adding up, We've got something else happening too. All through the blood, there are protein molecules. And when someone is on a high carbohydrate diet, dumping high glucose, there's a lot of glucose in the blood. And it connects with these protein molecules. This happens with the excess glucose, and they become sticky. And they start sticking on the walls of the artery. And say we've got an area here that's quite narrow, and we've got one of these sticky glucose protein molecules dislodges, moves down here, gets stuck. If that's in the carotid artery, there's your stroke. That's the #1 cause of a stroke. If it happens in the heart muscle, there's your cardiac arrest, there's your heart attack. Can you see it's not just one thing? It's a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of this, a bit of that. It's a whole lot of things. To say that cholesterol causes heart disease is like saying the fire trucks cause the fire. Well, they must cause the fire. Have you noticed they're always there? It's like saying the ambulances are causing the accidents. Well, they must. They're the one common denominator. See, what we should ever be asking is why? Why is there build-up in the artery? So when I worked in the operating theatre, we did a bypass one day. What's a bypass? You know what they do? They saw the chest wall open. They have clamps and pull it open. They cut out an artery from behind the knee and seal it off, cut out the blocked up artery, and then sew in the artery from down on the leg. But the heart pumps and that blood is strong. So the tissue that artery is made in is a bit stronger than the tissue made down here. So it's actually not going to last very long. That's why one of Michael's old bike he makes rang me up and said, "Hey Barb," his name's Jim, "doctor says I should have a bypass because I've got 2 arteries that are 80% blocked in my heart." I said, "Oh yeah?" He said, "Your husband tells me you could help me." I said, "Quite possibly." I said, "Well, what have I got to do?" I said, "Jim, you've got to stop your alcohol. You've got to stop smoking. You've got to stop the coffee. You've got to go on a plant-based diet. Come to Misty Mountain. We'll show you how. Get your exercising. Start drinking more water." He said, "Oh, Barb, that's a bit extreme." I tell you what I think's extreme. Sawing the chest open, cutting it up. We've forgotten what's extreme. He said, but Barb, the specialist's a really nice guy. I said, well, so he should be, but Jim, what's that got to do with your heart condition? Jim went and had the bypass. He thought what I suggested was a bit extreme. His quality of life greatly diminished. No one told him he really should stop the alcohol or the cigarettes or the heavy meat diet. I think he lived another 5 years. He died before he even reached 70. You know, I used to think 40 was old when I was 20. I used to think 60 was old when I was 40. Well, now that I'm nearing 70, I think 40 is pretty young. It's all relative, isn't it? What's it going to take? Number one killer in the world today is heart disease. So are the authorities doing anything to do about this? Yes. Unfortunately, there's no vaccine for it, they think. Well, there never will be a vaccine for it. So what are they doing? Well, number one, from about the 1980s, 70s, 80s, they put everyone on a fat-free diet, yeah? Fat-free, low fat. Told everyone to stop eating butter and start eating margarine. Has that reduced heart disease? No. Not at all. Not at all. So we've got to think of something else. Cholesterol-lowering medication. We'll put everyone over the age of 50 on cholesterol-lowering meds. Has that helped? Not at all. In fact, if anything, what it has done, it has increased dementia and Alzheimer's. In Australia, 1,700 new cases of Alzheimer's is being diagnosed every week. I haven't read about any case of Alzheimer's in the Bible, have you? And yet some of those people, they lived to lower 800 years age and their mind was clear. We've got the same minds, we've got the same bodies. So why is this happening? What is cholesterol-lowering medication? The statin drugs are the cholesterol-lowering medication. Lipitor, Crestor, they're probably the two most common. I've got a book in my library at home called Lipitor, Thief of Memory. And it's written by a doctor, and he's also an astronaut. I think he was late 40s at this stage. He went to the doctor to have his yearly checkup. The doctor said, your cholesterol levels are a bit high. What were his cholesterol levels? His cholesterol levels were about 220. So the doctor said, I want to put you on some cholesterol-lowering medication. Why did he agree to go on it? He agreed to go on it because of this. No one wants to die, do they? 2 weeks later, his wife found him out in the garden. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know where he was. This is a smart guy, astronaut, doctor. He stopped the Lipitor, and after a couple of weeks, his mind was clear again. A year later, or maybe 10 months later now, he goes to the doctor to have his yearly test. The doctor said, cholesterol levels are still a bit high. I want to put you on that drug again. And he said, no way. He said, I nearly went mad on that drug. The doctor said, this is very rare. I'll put you on half dose. He said, okay. 2 weeks later, his wife found him out in the garden. He didn't know who she was, didn't know where he was. Same scenario. So he stopped it immediately. He decided to put his story up on Google. And when they saw it, they said, what a story. Can we put it out there? Within hours, thousands of hits of people that said the same thing happened to me. You see, what the cholesterol-lowering medication does, it blocks the pathway in the liver that the liver uses to make cholesterol. But the same pathway that the liver uses to make cholesterol, it uses to make coenzyme Q10. And what's coenzyme Q10? That's your heart protective enzyme. So anyone who goes on the statin drugs has now lost their heart protective enzyme. Does that mean that someone who goes on cholesterol-lowering medication is actually more susceptible to heart disease? What are the side effects of a cholesterol-lowering medication? Lipitor, Crestor, and all the statin drugs. Dementia, Alzheimer's, memory loss, muscle wasting, and they've just added another one, and that's breast cancer, because our sex hormones are made from cholesterol. We had a pharmacist do our program, and she said, I'm really annoyed. She said, I'm a pharmacist. Drugs are my profession. I'm not against drugs, but she said recently a circular went out that anyone with a cholesterol level below 190 or above 190 had to go on cholesterol-lowering medication. She said, this is just a money-making scheme. Now, this is what the pharmacist is telling me. She said, because if someone's on an antibiotic, how long are they on for? A week. She said, if they're put on cholesterol-lowering medication, how long are they told they're on it for? Life. And when I was in New Zealand, this is a few years ago now, I was giving health lectures. One evening I gave a presentation on heart health. I told about the dangers of cholesterol-lowering medication. Tuesday night. Thursday night, an elderly gentleman and his wife came up to me and he said, I have a story for you. He said, we came to your lecture on Tuesday night. He said, my wife's been on Lipitor for 5 years. He said, she's losing her mind, she's got dementia, she's getting very difficult to handle. She leaves the iron on. She wanders in the street in the middle of the night. And we made the very difficult decision to put her into an aged care facility. We heard your lecture. We stopped immediately the Lipitor. He said, it's only 2 days, but I can see my wife's getting her mind back. Wow. He had tears in his eyes, and so did she. They said, thank you. How many people in aged care facilities have dementia because of their cholesterol-lowering medication? And that's why at the end of this meeting I'm going to write up all the names of those books. These are researchers, these are scientists, these are cardiovascular surgeons who are blowing the whistle that cholesterol does not cause heart disease. So what causes heart disease? It's damage to the arterial walls. And that's another reason why we've got to get the chemicals out of our life, out of our home. Can you turn this around? You can. We live in an amazing body with an inbuilt ability to heal itself. So the first step is abstain. You got to stop the chemicals. Don't do what one lady did. She said, Barbara, thank you so much for the program. I went home, I cleaned out all my cupboards and I gave it all to the poor people next door. My response is, poor people. I know it's hard, but you're going to save money when all you have to have in your laundry cupboard is sodium bicarbonate and white vinegar. The money you save, you can get some nice essential oils. Young Living and doTERRA are probably two of the better. They're expensive, but they're very concentrated. You only need a drop. And that gives a nice scent. So cholesterol-lowering medication has made no difference regarding heart disease, but it has raised memory loss, dementia and Alzheimer's. If you've been on cholesterol-lowering medication for 5 years, 10 years, and you stop immediately, there will be a side effect. Your memory will return. That's it. There is no danger of stopping that immediately. If you're on cortisone or prednisone, you cannot stop that. That has to be eased off very slowly. But regarding the cholesterol-lowering medication, that can be ceased immediately. So what else have they done? Number 2, lowered the levels. What do I mean by that? It was about 8 years ago now, at the health retreat in Alabama. There was a couple there. The lady was 69, and she looked great. She looked about 50. She was very fit. She was slim. She really looked after her body. She said, I'm a nutritionist. I have my own private practice and I also work with a doctor half the week. She said, I have the advantage of being schooled 40 years ago in the university. She said 40 years ago in the university, we were told that a cholesterol level of 300 was perfectly fine. So 220 was perfectly fine. And if you go under 150, the brain's not going to work well because the brain needs the fat. In fact, under 150 can be actually a bit dangerous. So if someone, well, here was another one. I had a young girl say to me, Barbara, I'm 30, I had my cholesterol levels done, they're 190. The doctor said I have to go cholesterol lowering medication, and she's 30. I have never had a cholesterol test. I don't know what my cholesterol levels are. I'm not really interested to know. Everything works. Everything works. A lot of money spent on tests. Yeah?
What about VLDL?
I wanted to keep it simple. I wanted to show you that the body doesn't make anything bad. That the LDL is not an enemy. It's just doing its job. And the body runs according to precision balance. And the way to keep the balance, the way to sustain me is through these basic laws of health. And we have found when these basic laws of health are implemented, the body starts to restore balance. Another problem, we're told, is salt. Yeah? We've got to stop the salt. So let me give you the salt story. Seawater. Seawater is the highest concentration of sodium, and it contains 92 minerals. In fact, in the book The Calcium Lie by Dr. Robert Thompson, he says the clearest indicator of a creator God is seawater, because seawater has the exact mineral balance and proportion as is found in our body, in our blood, in our bones, in our tissues. And the good news is we don't have to drink seawater. In fact, we shouldn't drink seawater predominantly. So last year when I was staying in Ireland and my friend Jenny that I stayed with, we drove 10 minutes every day and ran up and down the sand hills and dived into the sea, and I always had a couple of mouthfuls. But predominantly I drink water. Water is the liquid that God designed everyone to drink. Now, of those 92 minerals, sodium takes up 30%, and chloride takes up approximately 50%. I think it's exactly 52%. And because they're the first crystals formed when the water's evaporated, man scoops up the sodium chloride, bleaches it white, puts aluminium with it, and there's your table salt. Now be careful, they can even call that sea salt. Well, it came from the sea. But the salt, so table salt, basically is 2 minerals. The salt that we use is Celtic salt. And Celtic salt is a hand-harvested sea salt, and it contains 82 minerals. So where are the other 10? They're in such pico proportion, barely measurable, that it's inevitable that some are lost in the evaporation process. Himalayan salt is probably a little bit more freely available, and it contains 75 minerals. So it's still fairly close. The membrane around every cell in the body is a bilayered membrane, 2 layers. And there are sodium-potassium pumps inside that layer. And that sodium-potassium pumps are ever basically going like this to keep the balance of sodium, highest amounts outside the cell or extracellular. Inside the cell, it's potassium is the highest mineral. There is a little bit of sodium. But these sodium-potassium pumps keep that in its balance. But if someone is taking table salt is such harsh minerals, you inject that straight into the blood, you would kill a person. Sodium chloride needs all the other minerals to buffer those 2 harsh minerals. So someone's putting sodium chloride on their food. Have you noticed that they put it all over their food without even tasting their food? Do you know why? Because these 2 harsh minerals kill the taste buds. Whereas Celtic salt, Himalayan salt, with all the minerals, they awaken the taste buds. So let's say we've got someone having table salt on everything. So what's happening with sodium levels in their body? They're rising. And they're not eating any fresh fruit and vegetables because it takes too long, and they're so busy they just grab the quick mushy food that hardly needs 3 bites and it's down. So what's happening to potassium levels? Potassium levels now are dropping. With the rise in sodium and the drop of potassium, osmosis happens when diffusion with the highest concentration merges into the lowest concentration. What's now happening to sodium? Sodium levels are rising in the blood. That causes the cell to swell. There's your high blood pressure. The doctor's right. This salt will contribute to high blood pressure. Dr. Lilangri is a French doctor who's written a whole book on salt. It's called The Secret of the Sea, something like that. And he says, when I get a patient with high blood pressure, I immediately put them on Celtic salt because it'll bring the balance back. In the Bible, it talks about salt. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, Jesus is speaking. He says, "You are the salt of the earth. If the salt has lost its savour, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men." Old English. I love the poeticness of Old English. If the salt has lost its savour, I'd like to suggest that this salt has lost its savour. It's lost all the other minerals. What does the Bible say? It's now good for nothing but to be cast under foot of men. And when I was in Minneapolis in the winter, I saw them throwing the salt on the road to melt the snow. And I thought of that verse. I thought, oh, that must be the sodium chloride. Whereas the Celtic salt, it's a hand-harvested sea salt. They wait till all the water evaporates. And you'll notice when you buy Celtic salt, it's grey. Hasn't been bleached, and it's very, very high in minerals. In fact, that Celtic salt has 3 magnesiums: magnesium sulfate, magnesium bromide, and magnesium chloride. And magnesium is a water-hungry molecule, so it pulls water into itself. And that's why when it's raining a lot, you look at your Celtic salt, it'll go really wet. It'll go really well because it's so high in magnesiums that they're water-hungry molecule. But when you put a crystal of Celtic salt in your mouth, how big? About the size of a sesame seed. Your mucous membranes are absorbing those minerals. The magnesium is taken to the cell, and then you drink your water. That magnesium pulls the water inside the cell. It's the quickest way to hydrate a body, is to take that little bit of salt and that glass of water. But there's more. Inside this membrane, there's a little motor. And when the water rushes through the membrane, that little motor starts spinning and gives us a unit of energy. So when everyone mid-morning's running out for their coffee and their cigarette to give them a lift, you go and find a tree, breathe your nice, remember, LSD, low, slow, deep breaths, have your Celtic salt and your water, and you'll go back in revived. They'll go back in spun up, but then half an hour later, where are they? Crashed. So there's salt and there's salt. And one little old lady said, I was too scared to tell my doctor I was having salt. I just told him I was on a mineral supplement. You're the doctor here. If you've trained yourself out of salt, go lightly as you reintroduce that salt. Our palate tells us we need salt. We need salt. We need the minerals. Our bones, our blood is made of this. So what I'd like to look at now is blood thinners. I've read newspaper articles, supposedly health articles, that say everyone over the age of 50 should be on half an aspirin a day. Have you read that? To keep the blood nice and thin to prevent heart disease. Well, let me tell you the latest research on aspirin. It causes brain bleeds, contributing to dementia. It causes eye bleeds, contributing to deterioration of eyesight. It causes stomach bleeds, one of the biggest contributing factors to stomach ulcers. I'm not interested in any of that. The best blood thinners, and I can testify because I used to do the live blood analysis when I worked at Misty Mountain Health Retreat. And if someone had not drunk any water, their blood basically was in clumps like this. You see, the blood should be like this. So when the blood's like that, it's very difficult to read. So I would always presume I've spoiled the slide. It's very easy to spoil a slide. So 5 blood slides later, it's still like this, and I'd say, have you had any water to drink today? No. I didn't drink because I was travelling and I didn't want to have to keep stopping. And I had to say, well, I'm so sorry I cannot read your blood, but I'll read it in a couple of days. And as soon as they saw their blood and realised what was happening, they started drinking water. And then I look at their blood in a couple of days and it's nice and free. So I know that one of the best blood thinners is just water. At least 8 glasses a day. And so that your body can access it better, please just have half a glass at a time. Some people find that it's better to have a quarter of a glass at a time. One lady said to me, Barbara, I can't drink water, it makes me feel sick. I said, oh, so what do we do then? Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble. Investigate. And I said, tell me what you do when you wake up in the morning. Well, when I wake up in the morning, I drink 16 ounces of water all at once, but I feel so sick. I said, yeah, I would too if I drank 16 ounces all at once. So what's her body telling her? It's too much at once. I said, try half a glass. Oh, it's still too much. Well, try a quarter of a glass. Does that work? Yeah. And just spread it over, spread it over, spread it over. How does God send the rain? Little by little. When we have a torrential downpour, what's the garden like? I was in a hurricane in Fiji once, 150 kilometres an hour the winds were. And then you had the eye of the storm where everything stopped, and we got in the car and we're going around. All the mangoes were on the ground. In some of the little villages, all their roofs had been blown off. Just think of that next time you're tempted to drink a whole glass of water all at once. Little by little by little, your body can take it. And that little salt. How often I endeavour to have a crystal of salt before every glass of water. In my little handbag, which is up the back there, I have a little container that has my salt in it. And you know, often at churches you've got old ladies giving out candies. Well, this old lady gives out salt. My grandchildren go to my bag and they know the little container and they put a little bit of salt. Oh, they love salt. Because as soon as they've had the salt, what do they go and do then? Have a drink of water. Cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is a remarkable herb. And cayenne pepper has 3 effects. Cayenne pepper, number 1, thins the blood. Number 2, it is a vasodilator. So I'm teaching you some medical terms here. Does everyone remember what a vasodilator is? It opens the blood vessels. So if the blood vessel's this wide, you take a vasodilator, it'll open it this wide. A vasodilator, vaso meaning vascular, blood system, it opens the blood vessels. So that's number 2, what it does, it's a vasodilator. So that's number 2. And number 3, it strengthens the arterial walls. So if a person has had a build-up in the arteries, if I had build-up in my arteries, I would not have a bypass. What I would do is I would start taking 2 capsules of cayenne pepper 3 times a day. In the book Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss, he devotes half a page to every herb, 10 pages to cayenne pepper. He quotes 2 doctors. One doctor says it's impossible to abuse cayenne pepper. Do you know what that means? You could have a bucket load of cayenne pepper a day and it won't hurt you. But I don't know anyone who's done that. Back to Eden. Back to Eden. It was written in the early 1900s. It's almost called the Bible on herbs. Strengthens the arterial walls. Some people say, but is that safe? Does anyone ever say to their doctor when they're given cholesterol-lowering medication, is that safe? Or when they're given aspirin, is that safe? Do you know they're not? They're not. But remember what the doctor says, it's impossible to abuse cayenne pepper. It might feel like it's burning, but it's tingling. The other doctor said it'll never cause a lesion. You know what that means? It will never damage the lining of your gut. And if you've got a stomach ulcer, it'll even heal that. Yes?
How many capsules was it again?
2 capsules 3 times a day. Now that's quite a strong dose. But if someone's coming off blood thinning medication, and if anyone's on rat poison, warfarin, because you know that's what it is. It causes rats to bleed to death. So they don't just give as much to humans. But I've known people that have said they just brush their arm and they bruise. Their blood just comes out of their nose. They're on too much. So that can be stopped immediately. I can't tell you what to do with your medication, but I can tell you what I would do, and I would go on 2 capsules 3 times a day. Remember what the good doctor said, a medical doctor in Jethro Kloss's book, he says, you cannot overdo it. You cannot abuse cayenne pepper. And you watch, if you're taking that much, your digestion will improve, your bowels will become nice and regular. Some people say, but isn't it a stimulant? It is. But do you know what it stimulates? Blood. It's a blood stimulant. I'm not interested in a nervous system stimulant, which is caffeine, which is refined sugar, which is alcohol, which is nicotine. They're nervous system stimulants. But remember what Leviticus 17:11 says? The life of the flesh is in the blood. So anything that stimulates blood stimulates life. Yes?
What international or what heat units would you say is good to take?
Heat units. Now this is an unusual thing for me. We don't have this in Australia. So I do understand in America a lot of your cayenne pepper is gauged on heat units. Now, the higher the heat unit, the less you need. So that's all I'll say because I'm not familiar with heat units.
So I tried one time. I had 400 international, heat units. And then I ran out of those, so then I thought, oh, well, the strong ones would be probably better, right? So I took some of those, I bought some of those. And I'm telling you, whenever I would take those, they'd open up in my stomach. I had nothing but pain. My stomach was just like it was on fire, and I had to throw up.
Okay, so the lady said she took 90 units of heat units and the stomach felt like it was on fire and she threw up. So what's the body just saying? That's just a bit much. It's a bit much. And it feels like on fire, but it will never cause an ulcer. It's just a little bit too much.
It's painful. It's actually painful.
Yeah, it's painful. It's just too much. And so you're the doctor there, you just bring it back to what you can cope with. So it sounds like the 40,000 units, is it? That sounds like that works a bit better. That works a bit better. Garlic is also a blood thinner and vasodilator. Ginger is also a blood thinner and also a vasodilator. Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. How nice when medicine can be our food. I've had some people say to me, I'm spending a fortune on supplements. How nice when our food can be our healers. Ginger can be taken in many ways. My favourite is to grate it and pour boiling water on it and drink it. I love a hot ginger tea. We also put it in some of our juices. If I'm travelling and there's nothing to eat and I see there's a juice bar, I'll get carrot celery and apple juice with double ginger. Oh, it's very nice. Do they have juice bars here in Australia? Many airports have juice bars. Again, you're the doctor, you do what you can. Garlic is very strong in sulphur, and someone has a stomach ulcer or a tender stomach, that can be a little strong. But if you crush the garlic into a bowl of hot soup, the heat from the soup can just take the edge off. Again, it's like Edna discovered that she's not going to take the 90 units of cayenne pepper again. And sometimes people can handle that if they've got, they've just had a meal. So again, you play with that. So they're your blood thinners. They're your best blood thinners. And even if you were to have 20 glasses of water a day, a bucket of cayenne pepper a day, garlic and ginger, your blood will never get so thin that when you knock your arm, it'll bruise and the blood start coming out of your nose. No. Because remember, herbs work with the body. They're synergistic. Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. They serve you. And so I trust that I've blown the cholesterol myth. I trust I've also blown the salt myth. I trust I've also blown the blood thinning myth. You had a question?
Yeah, so once you've healed the artery walls,
yeah,
the cholesterol disappears. So that means your plaque disappears, right?
That's right. Little by little, the plaque can go. And I talked to someone who worked in Uchee Pines, and they said Agatha Thrash used to tell the story. She was the doctor and her husband, Calvin Thrash, that started Uchee Pines. They're both passed now. She said they had a lady come to do their program who was an alcoholic, and she was in her 70s. And she'd had an angiogram that showed that her arteries were 70 and 80% blocked. She did the program, but she not only changed her whole lifestyle. She surrendered her heart to God. And she said, I don't want to do what I was doing anymore. And she said to Agatha, is there a room that I could stay here and I'll work in the garden, I'll fold the laundry? And so Agatha said yes and found a place for her. And she enjoyed the next 10 months probably more than any part of her life. And then she had an embolism in her brain that burst and she had a massive stroke and she died. Agatha Thrash did a post-mortem on her and her arteries were clear. Now 10 months before she had 70 and 80% occlusion of her arteries. It's an interesting story because you're not often able to get that clear result, because I don't know, but I'm not interested in having an angiogram. I'm not interested in putting radioactive dye in my body. So how can you tell? One of the ways to know that your arteries are a little narrower and blocked is you get breathless easy. It's not the only cause of breathlessness, but you get breathless easy because there's not a lot of room for the blood to go through and the blood carries the oxygen. That's why breathlessness can be one way. We had one guy, he was a Samoan guy from the island of Samoa, big guy. He was in his 60s. He said, I don't want what they want to do to me. So he came and did our program, and every day he got less breathless and less breathless. He was only with us for a week. So even in a week we saw that he was less breathless. I don't know what's going in there. I don't know what's going on in there, but what's his body saying? We're getting a little bit more room going through there. Stress. Does stress cause high blood pressure? It's a contributing factor. So it's very important to assess your stress levels because life should be good. Isn't that true? So if there's any area of your life that's causing you stress, it's important to look at it and it's important to see where you can make some changes. There are some things we can change, there are some things we can't. And if we can't change it, we've really just got to say, well, my daughter gave me this saying recently, it is what it is, Mum. It is what it is. It's almost an acceptance. I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but I just need to accept that that's the way it is. It's like if it's raining, I can take an umbrella, I can manage the rain. If there's a leak in my roof, I can get a plumber or a builder and we can cut that out, fix the roof, it's fixed. But sometimes it might be a difficult mother-in-law or a difficult daughter-in-law. We just got to accept that and do the best we can with what we've got. Absolutely, there are some things that must stop. Inhale. Now, you might have caught this last night, you might not have caught it, because I know I'm guilty of information overload. Vasodilator. Vasodilator is the opening of the blood vessels. Vasodilator, we just looked at vasodilators and we looked at cayenne, we looked at ginger, we looked at garlic, but there's something else. There's two gases that are vasodilators. One is nitric oxide. And last night we looked at how when you breathe through your nose, nitric oxide is made. When you breathe through your mouth, it is not made. And the other vasodilator is carbon dioxide. And when you breathe out through your mouth, you lose too much carbon dioxide. We need some carbon dioxide. And when you breathe in and out through your nose, it stimulates the blood. It stimulates the ability of the body to balance the blood gases. And the two blood gases that act as vasodilators are nitric oxide and carbon dioxide. And I told the story of the men who plugged their noses up for 10 days, then unplugged them. And how when they unplugged, when their noses were plugged up, their blood pressure was going through the roof. They unplugged their noses and taped their mouth up. And they said within 1 week, the blood pressure had come down. What was the difference? You know, they weren't having cayenne pepper and they weren't, I don't even know if they were implementing the Sustain Me. All they did was change the way they were breathing. Now that's powerful. So these two blood gases are vasodilators, and they are only in balanced amounts in our blood if we're breathing in and out through our nose. Have you tried taping your mouth up yet? Train the body into doing that. So inhaling through the nose has an effect on blood pressure. Nutrition, we've looked at the high fibre, generous proteins, healthy fats. Remember, fats are not an issue. The only fats that can cause damage are the altered fats, and they certainly can damage the arterial walls. So please go over to your natural fats. If you buy olive oil, it must be first cold press. Coconut oil is a saturated fat, so it's light resistant, heat resistant. And when Captain Cook landed on the South Pacific Islands, he was confronted with the most magnificent specimens of humanity he'd ever seen. This is mid-1700s. The men were tall, strong, agile, perfect teeth. The women were beautiful, no disease. No heart disease, no strokes. And what did they eat every single meal? Coconut. So to say that saturated fat causes heart disease is not true. Let's go to the Maasai. The Maasai, they live on blood, milk and meat. Zero heart disease. So if fat causes heart disease, why aren't the Maasai dying like flies from heart disease? And they're not. Mind you, it's not a very balanced diet, it's not a very healthy diet, and they don't live very long lives, but they're incredibly active, which I think balances a little bit. And that brings us to the importance of exercise. The heart is a muscle, and strength comes by exercise. There is no other way. And your heart can get stronger and stronger. Your heartbeat can get less and less the more that you exercise. And the book Body by Science by Dr. Doug McGuff, he analysed the high-intensity interval training. And he did this for his heart patients. And he first started on himself, and he did a high intensity of 30 seconds, and then he did a recovery time of 90 seconds, and he did this for a cycle of 6. Okay, have you done the maths on that yet? We'll be generous. That's 15 minutes a day. If you don't have time to exercise, it's time for you to analyse what you do with your time. You actually don't have time not to. This is the best insurance policy that you can make, and it doesn't take long. The high intensity is pushing yourself hard. Most is on an exercise bike, it's going running for your life. And then the recovery time is slowly cycling. It can be on the rebounder. My son was jogging on the rebounder at my house. He's put a dent in my wooden floor. It could be push-ups. I found stairs where I'm staying, running up and down the stairs. I found a pool and I was hoping it doesn't open till 8 o'clock. I'm long gone by 8 o'clock. You just got to find out. It could be swimming, it could be push-ups, it could be anything that gets the heart rate up and the respiration increased. Yes?
Is there something safe for an older person who might not be stable on their feet?
That's why the exercise bike is good, especially for elderly people, because they're holding on. The rebounder's good, and you can get a handle for your rebounder. A lot of people are scared if they push themselves hard like that, they might have a heart attack. No one's ever had a heart attack doing the high-intensity interval training. But there are many who have keeled over and had heart attacks. What happened? Here it is. Sorry, I just fixed myself up again. But there are many stories of people having heart attacks on 5K jogs. See, when they're on 5K jogs, their body's not getting that rest. And that rest is vital. It's not an excuse because you can't go any longer. It's an important part of the high intensity interval training. Intervals of high intensity recovery. This evening, when I look at weight loss, I'm going to go inside the cell and show you in detail why this is such a powerful form of exercise. This strengthens the heart. So the 5K jog, some people have said, Barbara, I don't have an hour to do a 5K jog a day. I said, the good news, you don't have to have an hour. All you have to have is 15 minutes. And what I have found is if you don't make an appointment with exercise, you do not do it. The more you exercise, the stronger your heart will get. Our exercise coordinator's name is Howard. He's just turned 60 or about to turn 60, and all the guests think he's 40. He's incredibly fit. He exercises intensely. His resting heart rate sits at about 48 beats per minute. I don't think Howard's ever going to get old. He's an incredible example that muscle knows no age. Whether you're 9 or 90, you can be strong. So you just got to find out where and how you fit that in. Because to conquer heart disease, to strengthen the heart, to strengthen the arterial walls, to move that blood more efficiently and effectively through the whole body, exercise is not negotiable. It is a must. Now, if you can't do 30 seconds high intensity, just do what you can. In his book, PACE, Dr. Al Sears, he's called the exercise doctor. PACE means progressive acceleration of cardiopulmonary exertion. Progressive, this is progressive. What you can't do now, you will be able to do the more you do it. He gives the story of a lady who did 7 seconds high intensity and she needed 15 minutes to recover. Not everyone's that unfit. But if that's your story, the good news is it won't take 15 minutes tomorrow. Tomorrow you might get 8 seconds and have 10 minutes recovery. This is progressive. That's why the PACE means progressive acceleration. You are moving. You're moving fast. Cardiopulmonary strengthens the heart, strengthens the lung. Exertion, you are exerting yourself big time. And it's like anything in life, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And the story I told in my last presentation of Jim, who was sent home basically and they could do no more for him and conquered his diabetes. He also conquered his blood pressure. He got off all his medication and he did the high intensity interval training every day. You don't necessarily have to do what he did. He did everything to the extreme. He did 6K or 6 mile cycle every day. And the beauty of the cycle is every now and then there's a hill, there's your high intensity. Cruising down the hill, there's your recovery time. And the research shows that if in recovery time you are moving slowly, that's the best. If you totally stop, it's not as effective. Your recovery time is your indicator of fitness. So note your recovery time, because the fitter you get, the less time you will take to recover. I was watching a documentary on one of the long flights from Australia once, and the documentary was on 100-year-old athletes. Got that? 100-year-old athletes. So age is no barrier, and it should not be a barrier. Don't let it be a barrier. I wouldn't be surprised if Howard's still our exercise coordinator at the age of 80. So please, as the proverb says in Proverbs 4:23, keep the heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life. And God meant us to have a very happy, very healthy life. Life is to be enjoyed. And I think all of those around my age, I think you'll agree with me, grandchildren are wonderful. So let's keep fit so we can play with them, so we can cycle with them, so we can scooter with them, so we can climb mountains with them. And so we can be testimonies to them of what a difference these principles are to our life and how they definitely will sustain me. One lady said, it sounds a bit selfish to sustain me. I said, oh no, if I don't sustain me, I can't help anyone to sustain them. Let's close with a word of prayer. Father, thank you so much for how simple these principles are. Thank you for our heart. Thank you for showing us how we can strengthen it, how we can clear these blood vessels, how we can actually have a healthier and happier life. Thank you that it is so simple, and we thank you this afternoon. No, it's actually still this morning, in the name of Jesus. Amen.